Guys, back with another ASMR book reading. Alright, so we ended with last light of the fire caught in one pupil for a moment and was drowned there. He went to sleep. Alright, the gunslinger had lost most of his time sense in the desert, which was changeless. He lost the rest of it here in the passage under the mountains, which was lightless. Neither of them had any means of telling the clock. The concept of hours became meaningless. Abnegate. In the sense, they stood outside of time. A day might have been a week, or a week a day. They walked, they slept, they ate thin meals that did not satisfy their bellies. Their only companion was the steady thundering rush of water, drilling its auger path through the stone. They followed it and drank from its flat, mineral salted depth, hoping there was nothing in it that would make them sick or kill them. At times, the gunslinger thought he saw fugitive drifting lights like corpse lamps beneath its surface, but suppose they were only projections of his brain, which had not forgotten the light. Still, he cautioned the boy not to put his feet in the water. The rangefinder in his head took them on steadily. The path beside the river, for it was a path, smooth, sunken to a slight concavity, led always upward toward the river's head. At regular intervals, they came to curved stone pylons. Okay, I think I gotta close that door. At regular intervals, they came to curved stone pylons with sunken ring bolts, perhaps once oxen or stage horses had been tethered there. At each was a steel flagon holding an electric torch, but these were all barren of life and light. During the third period of rest before sleep, the boy wandered away a little. The gunslinger could hear small conversations of rattled pebbles as Jake moved them cautiously. Careful, he said, you can't see where you are. I'm crawling, what is it? The gunslinger half crouched, touching half of one gun. There was a slight pause. The gunslinger strained his eyes uselessly. I think it's a railroad, the boy said dubiously. The gunslinger got up, walked toward the sound of Jake's voice, leading with one foot lightly to test for pitfalls. Here, a hand reached out and cat's pawed the gunslinger's face. The boy was very good in the dark, better than Roland himself. His eyes seemed to dilate until there was no color left in them. Gunslinger saw this as he struck a meager light. There was no fuel in this rock womb, and what they had brought with them was going rapidly to ash. At times, the urge to strike a light was well nigh insatiable. They had discovered one could grow as hungry for light as for food. The boy was standing beside a curved rock wall that was lined with man, this fire doesn't want to stay lit. Boy was standing beside a curved rock wall that lined with parallel metal staves. running off into the darkness. Each carried black nodes that might once have been conductors of electricity, and beside and below, set only inches off the stone floor, were tracks of bright metal. One might have run on those tracks at one time. The gunslinger could only imagine sleek electric bullets firing their courses through this forever night, with affrighted searchlight eyes going before. He had never heard of such a thing. There were many remnants of the gone world, just as there were demons. The gunslinger had once come upon a hermit who gained a quasi-religious power over a miserable flock of kine keepers by possession of an ancient gasoline pump. The hermit crouched beside it, one arm wrapped possessively around it, preached wild, guttering sermons. He occasionally placed a slight, bright steel nozzle, which was attached to a rotted rubber hose, between his legs. On the pump, in perfectly legible, although rust-clotted letters, was the legend of unknown meaning, Amico, lead-free. Amico had become the totem of a thunder god, and they had worshipped him with the slaughter of sheep and the sound of engines. Rum, 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 rum. It's dawning. Anyways, hulks the gunslinger thought, only meaningless hulks poking through sands that once were seas. And now a railroad will follow it, he said. The boy said nothing. The gunslinger extinguished the light, and they slept. When Roland woke, the boy was up before him, sitting on one of the rails and watching him sightlessly in the dark. They followed the rails like blind men, Roland leading, Jake following. They slipped their feet along one rail always, also like blind men. The steady rush of the river off to the right was their companion. They did not speak, and this went on for 3 periods of waking. Gunslinger felt no urge to drink coherently or to plan. His sleep was dreamless. During the 4th period of waking, they literally stumbled on a handcar. Gunslinger ran into it, chest high, and the boy, walking on the other side, struck his forehead and went down with a cry. Oh my god. There's a wet piece of wood in there. It's not burning. It's extinguishing everything. They follow the rails like blind men. During the 4th period of walking, they literally stumbled on the handcar. Gunslinger made a light immediately. Are you alright? Yeah. The words sounded sharp, angry, and he winced at them. Yes, the boy was holding his head gingerly. He shook it once to make sure he had told the truth. They turned to look at what they had run into. It was a flat, square plate of metal that sat mutely on the tracks. There was a seesaw handle in the center of the square. It descended into a connection of cogs. Gunslinger had no immediate sense of the thing's purpose, but the boy grasped it at once. It's a handcar. What? A handcar, the boy said impatiently. Like in the old cartoons, look. Handcar, the boy said impatiently. Like the old cartoons, look. He pulled himself up and went to the handle, managed to push it down, but took all his weight, hung over the handle to turn the trick. The handcar moved a foot, with silent timelessness on the rail. Good, said a faint mechanical voice. It made them both jump. Good. Pushig. The mechanical voice died out. It works a little hard, the boy said, as if apologizing for the thing. The gunslinger pulled himself up beside Jake and shoved the handle down. The handcar moved forward obediently, then stopped. Good, push again, the mechanical voice encouraged. He had felt a drive shaft turn beneath his feet. The operation pleased him, and so did the mechanical voice. Louis intended to listen to that no longer than necessary. Other than the pump at the way station, this was the first machine he'd seen in years that still worked. Well, but the thing disquieted him too. It would take them to their destination that much the quicker. He had no doubt. Whatever that the man in black had meant for them to find this too. Neat, huh? The boy said. And his voice was full of loathing. The silence was deep. Roland could hear his organs at work inside his body, and the drip of water, and nothing else. You stand on one side, I stand on the other, Jake said. You'll have to push by yourself until it gets rolling good, then I can help. First you push, then I push. We'll go right along, get it? I get it, the gunslinger said. His hands were in helpless, despairing fists. Well, you'll have to push by yourself until it gets rolling good, the boy repeated, looking at him. Gunslinger had a sudden vivid picture of the great hall a year or so after the sewing night cotillion. By then it had been nothing but shattered shards in the wake of revolt, civil strife, and invasion. This image was followed by one of Ali, the scarred woman from Tull, pushed and pulled by bullets that were killing her for no reason at all, unless reflex was a reason. Next came Cuthbert Allgood's face, laughing as he went downhill to his death, still blowing that goddamn horn. And he saw Susan's face, twisted, made ugly with weeping. All my old friends, the gunslinger thought, and smiled hideously. I'll push, the gunslinger said. He began to push, and when the voice began to speak, good, push again, good, push again, he sent his hand fumbling along the post upon which the seesaw handle had been balanced. At last he found what he surely was looking for, a button. Pushed it. Goodbye, pal, the mechanical voice said cheerily, and was then blessedly silent for some hours. You would think that would stay on fire, but anyways. Alright, we'll go for another chapter today. That's short, okay. They rolled on through the dark faster now, no longer having to feel their way. The mechanical voice spoke up once, suggesting they eat crisp aloft, and again, to say that nothing satisfied at the end of a hard day like largies. Following the second piece of advice, it spoke no more. Once the awkwardness of a buried age had been run off the handcar, it went smoothly. The boy tried to do his share, and the gunslinger allowed him small shifts, but mostly he pumped by himself in large and chest-stretching rising and falling. The underground river was their companion, sometimes closer on their right, sometimes further away. Once it took on huge and thunderous hollowness, as if passing through some great cathedral narthex. Once the sound of it disappeared almost altogether. The speed and the made wind against their faces seemed to take the place of sight, and to drop them once again into a frame of time. The gunslinger estimated they were making anywhere from 10 to 15 miles an hour, always on a shallow, almost imperceptible uphill grade that wore him out deceptively. When they stopped, he slept like the stone itself. Their food was almost gone again. Neither of them worried about it. For the gunslinger, the tenseness of a coming climax was imperceivable but as real and accretive as the fatigue of propelling the handcar. They were close to the end of the beginning, or at least he was. He felt like a performer placed on center stage, minutes before the rise of the curtain, settled in position with his first line held securely in his mind. He heard the unseen audience rattling programs and settling in their seats. He lived with a tidy ball of unholy anticipation in his belly, and welcomed the exercise that let him sleep. And when he did sleep, it was like the dead. The boy spoke less and less, but as at their stopping place, one sleep period not long before, they were attacked by the slow mutants. He asked the gunslinger almost shyly about his coming of age. For I would hear more of that, he said. The gunslinger had been leaning with his back against the handle, a cigarette from his dwindling supply of tobacco planted in his lips. He'd been on the verge of his usual unthinking sleep when the boy asked this question. Why would be still to know that? He asked, amused. The boy's voice was curiously stubborn, as if hiding embarrassment. I just would. And after a pause he added, I always wondered about growing up. I bet it's mostly lies. What you'd hear of wasn't my growing up, the gunslinger said. I suppose I did the first of that not long after. What did hear of? When you fought your teacher, Jake said remotely. That's what I want to hear. Roland nodded. Yes, of course, the day he had tried the line. That was a story any boy might want to hear, all right. My real growing up didn't start until after my da sent me away. I finished doing it at one place and another along the way. He paused. I saw a knot man hung once. A knot man? I don't understand. You could feel him but couldn't see him. Jake nodded, seeming to understand. He was invisible. Roland raised his eyebrows. He had never heard the word before. You say so? Yes. Then let it be so. In any case, there were folk who didn't want me to do it. Felt they'd be cursed if I did it. But the fellow had gotten a taste for rape. Do you know what that is? Yes, Jake said. And I bet an invisible guy would be good at it too. How did you catch him? That's a tale for another day. Knowing there would be no other days, both of them knowing there would be no other day, no others. 2 years after that, I left a girl in a place called Kingstown, although I didn't want to. Sure you did, the boy said. The contempt in his voice was no less for the softness of his tone. Got to catch up with that tower, am I right? Got to keep it right, and just like the cowboys on my dad's network. Roland felt his face flush with heat in the dark, but when he spoke his voice was even. That was the last part, I guess. Of my growing up, I mean. I never knew any of the parts when they happened. Only later did I know that. He realized with some unease that he was avoiding what the boy wanted to hear. I suppose the coming of age was part of it at that, he said, almost grudgingly. It was formal, almost stylized, like a dance. He laughed unpleasantly. The boy said nothing. It was necessary to prove oneself in battle, the gunslinger began. Yeah, I find this guy jumps in and out of stuff a lot. But anyway. Alright, well, hope you guys enjoy reading by the fire.